Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I will have a story up Monday about Jaden Daniels and his historic game against Florida last year at LSU. So why that game? Well, because of what it showed about Daniels. You have competitiveness. You have a guy who wasn't able to prepare during the week because he was in concussion protocol, beat them with his arms, beat them with his legs, beat them with his brain, and just kind of how that solidified his Heisman race, but also how it absolutely whets the appetite of this franchise for what they have and what they hope he can do as he becomes more and more experienced. We've already seen what he can do when he's not experienced, and it's not too bad. Anyways, look for that on Monday. There you go. Also, I will be back after the game with another podcast. Now, the game's going to end pretty late, so look for that probably Tuesday morning for you diehards. I think the podcast will be up early. The video will probably be out Tuesday morning. I will be out in Arizona all next week. So before I get to my 5 things I think and things that I've learned throughout the week, it's not just about the game, it's about the team and some things that are going on, trying to look at what's going on with this team and what's important for you to know, and then to not just know about the team, but then in getting ready for the game. So one thing is defensive end Cleveland Farrell will not play because of an issue. Now, Dan Quinn told us on Saturday that he doesn't think this is going to be something that's long-term, which is good for him. However, it could be something that he deals with all season. It could be a lingering issue, just has to manage it. So, he did get placed on injury reserve during the playoff run last season with San Francisco. So, I don't know if it's the same issue, but there you go. So, but they don't, like I said, Quinn does not think he'll be out, that it's not going to be a long absence. As far as Emmanuel Forbes, he is listed as questionable with the thumb injury. I've watched him practice the last couple of days. He's done some things, whether it's in coverage, catching the ball, but et cetera, with that thumb. But it does sound like, though he's listed as questionable, Quinn said they'll take it up to Monday, but it certainly sounds like there's a better chance that he plays against Arizona the following week. So there we go. So let's get to my 5 things I think. Let's start with Terry McLaurin, because always a lot of talk about McLaurin. If he's not getting the ball, why not? So let's go back to last week. And it's funny because I see some people saying, oh, you just got to throw him some bombs. You got to throw it down there to him. Well, the play has to actually be there for that to happen. And it wasn't happening against the Giants. And, McLaurin even said, like, he could see them, sometimes the Giants defenders motioning for a bracket coverage, and it happened a lot. So now could there have been some opportunities? Sure, probably, but not many. And so one thing that I think to note with this is, first of all, they scored 21 points. Now, is that a lot? No, they could have been better, but the issues were in the red zone. The issue wasn't moving the ball. It was scoring in the red zone. So while you could use McLaurin there, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit differently somehow, but the issue wasn't moving the ball down the field. So my point in saying that is, it's not like the offense was bogging down because of that necessarily. And I credit how Jaden Daniels handled the situation, because he knows that McLaurin needs the ball. They know the importance of him the ball, but he's not forcing it. And he's not just looking at, oh my God, I got to get him the ball. They say, hey, it's not there. I'm going over here. And I told you the other day that in the first game, there were several opportunities where they could have connected and just didn't. And again, one was a deep ball, one was the back shoulder. Deep ball a little bit, but if the deep ball is connected, we're not talking about this the same way. If the back shoulder is thrown instead of the fade, but that's an experience thing. So, and there was another one where, again, as Daniels progresses more and more, he's probably going to read it differently and make the throw. So I don't worry, and I told you I don't worry about their connection, and I don't think McLaurin is either. One thing I know is those two talk quite a bit. They communicate all the time. Daniels goes up to him all the time. They talk about what they're seeing. They're watching film together with the receivers and the quarterbacks. They're talking about what they're seeing so they can get on that page. And for McLaurin, it's like, okay, if you see this safety flat-footed here, now go to me, right? Because that, like, he's going to take that safety. If you get safety in the slot and he's over you and he's flat-footed, that's your trigger. Get to me. I will get there. And so I think that's what's going to build up over time. So with McLaurin, I think you can see more big plays happening as a result of, I think, their communication. It's text later, throughout the day, whether at home or in the facility, whatever, and then communication at the facility in particular. So I don't worry about what's going on there. I think that will be solved I think McLaurin's going to have a big game at some point because he'll get the favorable coverage and Daniels will go to him because again, I think there is a connection there that they will take advantage of. And also for Monday, so the Bengals have Cam Taylor-Britt he's a good corner. He's an aggressive corner, a very competitive corner. I think he competes. You talk to guys like the guy doesn't take many plays off, if any, I would say. So I'm not even going to say he takes any off. So I think that's one thing. I also think he's a smart corner. Now, he's the one who said, you want to go Google or go see the video he put out there that he said on video that he thinks that the Kingsbury offense is simplistic. They're not asking Daniels to do a lot. Well, listen, he's only played 2 games. I don't know that they're asking him to do a ton. And I will say the Kingsbury offense, that I talked to some people after he was hired who worried are his route concepts complex enough to grow an offense. I think it's way too early to tell what it is here because of how new everything is, and you have a rookie quarterback. Again, the problem has not been moving the ball. I mean, there are opportunities too against the Bucs where with a few plays and a couple of missed field goals, you could be looking at back-to-back games of really good offensive production. Now, it wasn't, so you can't. But the point is, I think they're in position to get that. And so I think that's what it always starts with. Are you in position to get these plays, get these big plays? And I think the answer has been yes. And I think with McLaurin, he's going to get there as well. So the one thing that I bring up, with Taylor-Britt, smart corner. So now and by that, I mean, he's going to play to his leverage. He understands the leverage, how to play it. He understands where his help is. So he's a lot of times going to play some outside leverage. So if you're McLaurin, the number one I'm thinking is, hey, slant the crap out of him because that's where, and he can live inside. McLaurin does really well inside. So I think you could see some of that this week if they're going to roll the safety, you get that corner playing outside leverage, then you can get him inside on some of those slants. Not everybody's going to play him like that, but when you watch Taylor-Britt, he does do that for sure. And so I think there's going to be opportunities for McLaurin to be more productive this week. And, again, look for some stuff inside. I think that will help. And then, I think, I'm not worried about that. And again, I think a big key is the constant communication those two have. They will get there for sure. So number 2, so they don't have Clelin Ferrell. What happens at defensive end? And let's start with, they do have a couple options there. Obviously, you have Dante Fowler Jr. who can rush the passer in that. You also have Javonte Jean-Baptiste and Jamin Davis. So look for Davis clearly to be active this week. How much he plays, I don't know. I do think he can help them against the run, and I think he can help them. But the guy who really stands out for them is Javonte Jean-Baptiste. And I'll tell you what, and I talked about him this summer more than a few times, I really like what I've seen from him. In fact, he and Johnny Newton could be key parts for this line for a few years if they develop them the way I think they can, or the way I think if you're a fan, the way you hope they can. So with Jean-Baptiste, I do, it's funny because watching him, you see him show up on tape. He will make a play each game where it's that's just a good, solid play. You don't see him losing his leverage a lot on the outside. And you see him I think he has strong hands. And, I thought some of it may just be from length. I think it's just he has strong hands. And I think that plays to his advantage. I think the other thing too, with he and Newton, I keep bringing the word think, and that's a key here because I think he and Newton both will say they've been overthinking. Now, in Newton's case last week, well, that's obvious why, right? It's his first action. There was no joint practice sessions. There were no preseason games for him. Of course, you're going to overthink. So the question is, when do you stop doing that? Well, you don't stop in your second game. It's going to keep happening. But the quicker he can get there, the sooner he will help this team. What you see now is is nothing for what I think he can get to, because again, he doesn't really know what he's doing out there. It's his first action there. You shouldn't know. And I think the same thing with Javonte Jean-Baptiste. Now the difference is he's been there all summer and all season, and he played in the first couple of games, playing preseason games. So he has a much further head start on where, in terms of maybe trying to curb the overthinking. And that's one of the things I talked to him about on Saturday. And same, I talked to Newton about this the other day, but with Jean-Baptiste, the whole thing is like, he felt like sometime you're up at the line of scrimmage and maybe you're not watching the right stuff. You want to keep your eye on the ball. And they both talked about improving their get off. So how do you do that? You keep your eye on the ball, you get upfield. And how do you do that? Well, you know what your assignment is. You're not just going to turn your head and look at it, but you can kind of keep an eye on that and know what you're supposed to get to. But when you're not sure where you're supposed to get to, when you're still trying to read things, then you may take your eye off the ball and therefore not get the same start or jump off the ball. And so I think that's one thing for Jean-Baptiste, is he feels like he can get a quicker jump off the ball, that he feel that it's more, again, curbing the overthinking. And I think that's where that he could really help them. And so he'll be matched up against Trent Brown. I was going to say Trent Scott, but it's Trent Brown. And Amarius Mims may play some too on Monday for the Bengals, a guy that Washington would love to have had, just not going to trade up to get him ahead of the Bengals. Would have cost him quite a bit to do that. So, but anyway, Trent Brown will play. And the key thing against Brown, and I'll get to him in a minute, well, I would say now, but the key thing against him, get your hands into his chest right away. Because if you get your hands in his chest, that dude plays off balance a lot. So you can knock him back with that. Now he's a big fella, and he can kind of engulf people or just make it hard to get around him because he's long. But if you're able to get your hands into him first, he will get knocked off balance. And so it's just that size can be really big, but that's something he can do. And if Jean-Baptiste can do that, Jamin Davis, whomever, that's where you can have an advantage, at least to maybe make a play in the backfield. So, but I think that's where you can really, I think that can help them. And I do believe that both those guys can play in this league. It's just that they just need some time to get there. But so we'll see some of that. We'll definitely see some of that on Monday night, but that's kind of the plan there. And I do like I said, I've liked Jean-Baptiste from the summer. I mean, I never thought they were initially going into the season, the summer, you're like, well, would they keep him or not? Well, when you watch him, like, well, you're not going to cut him because he can play. And with Jean-Baptiste, I know Quinn told us on Saturday that he really feels like the pass rush is starting to come for him. In fact, like watching him in the one-on-ones this week, he had a couple really nice rushes in that situation against some of the starters. So I think he's kind of ready for that. And then with Newton, one of the things that Newton told me too is, what did he say? Just a lot of it's just about the reps. And he did say about overthinking and needing to just go. And I think that's the key. And I think one of the things that you see from him, and here's where it helps. So he did not play against Tampa. And I'll going to get to the D-line in a few minutes, but just real quick on Newton. When you watch Baker Mayfield run around, what was the thing they couldn't do? They couldn't catch him. Well, here's a guy that has a lot more speed, or not a lot more speed, but is a quick guy, athletic, and good change of direction rusher. I think that can help against a guy like what Baker Mayfield was a couple weeks ago, but a guy like Joe Burrow on Monday. And then, of course, the next week, Kyler Murray, you definitely need that. So I think that's where he could help him as well. So be curious to see. Now, I don't know how many snaps that Newton's going to play. I'm going to guess 15 to 20, but it'll be more than 12. So there you go. Now, on to the next. Zach Ertz. Let's talk about his blocking, because we know about his hands. He's caught, he's done a nice job in the first couple of games catching the ball, but we knew that, right? He had a couple of really nice blocks, I felt like, the other day. And if you're going to be a good run team, you need the contributions on the outside. Like, we know John Bates can block. Zach Ertz is not going to be John Bates. In fact, he even said, I'm not John Bates as far as a blocker goes. But if you want to run the ball well, you need to get contributions from the outside. And, it's funny because one of the things McLaurin talked about on Saturday was with the receivers for himself in particular. And I've told you this, like, I think he's been very inconsistent with it. But then he even said that, like, it's got to be improved as a blocker. And it's more about technique, leverage. It's not staying or holding your block more and just basically obstructing in a lot of cases. But that's something I think Ertz has done well. And it's funny because when I was talking to him about it this week, he said that, when he came in the league, he came to an offense with Chip Kelly. He came as a pass catching tight end. Chip Kelly is a really good run game coordinating coach. So the run game is very important to him. So you had to become a better blocker. Now, they had Brett Selleck when he got there. and he was a very good player, but so he had to learn how to block though. And he's done now. Is he better blocker than a pass catcher? No, but he became a good blocker for them down the field, certainly in cases. And he would show that, I think, again, last week in particular. So for him, a lot of it is don't be over aggressive and trust your technique. And I think he's doing that. And it's why he is because if you're over aggressive, they use it against you. So I think you have to learn how to do that. And I think that's a key for him blocking for sure. And give him credit. He wasn't good at it early in his career. Some guys never get better at it, but he did. And I think it's something he said, as he said, it's something he takes pride in. And it's something again that he has done a nice job with and can help this team in doing. Now, the receivers have to continue to do that again, as McLaurin said. Zaccheaus did a really nice job on some blocks last week. In fact, I think the way he played was good enough because he's one of the 3 game captains. I forgot to mention that. So it's Zaccheaus, and then Tressway is the other captain. And then on defense, it is I kind of forgot there for a minute. It's Bobby Wagner. So that makes sense. So, but Zaccheaus was on there too. And I like the way he plays. Is he the flashiest, greatest player? No, but I think, I brought up the run game stuff. He had a nice block on one of Brian Robinson's runs that I felt was just, hey, you're up against a linebacker and he held his ground. And it's like, all you have to do is hold it for a second, let him get that opening. And he did that. So I like the way he has played with that. So there are your captains. But anyways, that's one thing that I think is important for sure. The Cincinnati offense, and I'm going to get to the run game more in a minute because it goes for the last item about the Bengals defensive line, but also with this run game, et cetera. Let's go to the Bengals offense though, because T. Higgins is going to be back and playing on Monday night. And that changes what that offense can do, because in the first 2 games, when you'd watch them, and I pretty much watch every play that they've played so far, so much coverage rolling to Jamar Chase, as you would imagine. And I think the Bengals did a really good job at times of playing off that with Mike Gesicki, their tight end. In fact, there are a lot of times where they're going to end up in a stack formation off of a motion. And last week, especially with the Chiefs, you'd see him come off the line and you have 2 guys eyeing Jamar Chase, and it just leaves Gesicki open. And if they time and again, they played off of the focus on Chase. Now, it's going to be hard you can still provide that kind of attention to Jamar Chase if you really want to take him away. And he is a dangerous, dangerous receiver. You cannot give it's hard to give that kind of attention to 2 receivers all game. In fact, for some, you talk to the D-backs, you kind of have to pick your poison here. And the same thing is true with this defense. And there are times with Washington's defense, of course, has not done a good enough job. And some of it is certainly that they're new. And, I did not expect instant success with this defense. I think we can say that you expected some better play from this defense. Now, some of that I think goes back to not being together this summer in the preseason games. And I think guys missing and not getting action. I've already talked to some who say, I wish I had played more in the preseason, because I think they just want to get that rush shaken off. But the trend in the NFL is not to do that. So here we are. And the coaches need to get to know what they have to do. The players need to get to know what the coaches exactly want, or how, what they're asking to do. Is it working or not? How, et cetera. So I think that's part of it. The other part is you got to make plays, and they haven't done that. And, you watch the defensive tackles last week, Allen and Payne were getting double teamed to a lot of the game. That's what it was. Now, can you get off and make plays? Yes. And I think they'd be the first to say that. And so they have to do better with that, or at least not get it moved out of your gap as much as you were. And the Giants have a big offensive line, and that didn't help. I don't think the Bengals are going to double them quite as much as what the Giants did last week. I don't know that they're going to feel like they need to, because I think there are other ways that you can hurt this team without having to devote that much to protection. And I think that's just my guess. The Giants use a lot of 6 and 7 man protections that I don't know that the Bengals would do, but we'll see. So one of the things too, that I go back to Johnny Newton, and Joe Burrow can escape the pocket too. And when he does, he's just as dangerous as what we saw from Baker Mayfield a couple games ago. And so you have to do a good job making sure that you're not, there's some gap integrity with that, whether it's in the run game or the as a pass rusher, your rush lane integrity, right? So if but you want to get upfield, like they want these guys to be a little bit more aggressive getting upfield than they've been in the past. So and sometimes in doing that, you can get out of your gap. And sometimes if you go too hard for a sack, you absolutely get out of your gap. And we've seen that time and again over the years with some of these guys up front. And so that's been something that but if you get to the quarterback and you get them, okay. But that's where again Newton can help with that change of direction, for sure. And I know, again with some of those double teams too, and what the theory should be, right? If there are all these double teams, then somebody should be getting to the ball and making a play. And the linebackers, I'd say Wagner and Luvu, they've been very happy with what they've seen from them, and I think they should. Like Wagner has done a nice job with tackles 3 yards and close to the line of scrimmage and some behind the line. I think Luvu brings a lot of energy. I think the more you see him play, the more you're going to feel that energy for sure, because I think that he's that kind of a player. So what can you do to, I think the pressure in the first game was good. You just didn't get Baker Mayfield down. The pressure last week was not. Some of that you can credit to the protection schemes for the Giants against 7 and 6 man fronts, where they had some successes when they were able to move the defensive line a little bit and maybe slanting the line a little bit with linebacker kind of coming around them and just creating some, shooting some gaps like that. That's something you can do as well. But the other thing is sometimes too in that run game, when you stop the game and you look at like, what are the numbers? Do they have the numbers? And a lot of times the answer was no. So that goes back to either is somebody out of the gap and why, or did you have enough numbers there to defend this particular play? And sometimes the answer has been no. And sometimes it's because you have 2 safeties deep. If you have 2 safeties deep, what are they going to do? They're going to run the ball. And that's just what you should do. It's basic math. And if you're Washington, do you then bring a safety up and have 8 in the box? Well, again, talking to defensive backs, like, all right, then, what's going to happen? They're going to throw over the top. And do you want to see that? Or would you rather give up 6 or 7 yards on the ground? What you can't do is just get gashed, and they're just going to score that way. But if you can, kind of basically play well in the red zone and not give up big plays, then I think you have a chance in this game to at least control what Cincinnati wants to do on offense. But they are capable of some absolute big plays because they have the talent to do it. And again, I think Mike Gesicki is a dangerous one because they play him off of the other receivers very well. So they will take advantage of you keeping your eyes on one guy, and he will then slip underneath or kind of under the radar, so to speak, and get open. So I think, and then when you have with Jamar Chase, a key has been in the first couple of games, like his air yards per target it's 5.36. Coming into the year, I think his average air yards in his first 3 years was over 10. So what does that tell you? They're first of all, they're working really hard to get him the ball in multiple ways. He will run routes out of the backfield. So they're going to try and create mismatches that way. And I love that stuff. So they're going to do that. And they're going to run some screens for him. They're going to run, hitches, all kinds of routes, but you got to tackle after the catch. And that's one of the things, like he's not getting as many yards after the catch because they're doing a good job of tackling. If you don't tackle well with him, that's a problem. Last week against Malik Neighbors, we saw what happened when Mike Davis didn't tackle. You get those 2 runs, he probably could have had he had 10 catches for, 100 yards or whatever it was. You take away about 20 or 30, 20, 25 yards, you make the tackle. It's basic, right? And you're in position to make it. So make the plays that are there in front of you. And you give up 7 yards on a catch. Okay. Don't give up 20 because you missed a tackle. And that's what was happening. They've missed too many tackles back there, especially against him. So if you can, but that's the key against Jamar Chase. And, Benjamin St. Juste faced him a couple of years ago when they played here in the preseason game. I think it was 2021. There's a lot has changed with Jamar Chase since then. He's a very different receiver from what they saw then. But I know that he does have the memory of, how does he handle jams? How does he handle this and that? But the big key will be getting him on the ground. I thought that Benjamin St. Juste, I'm going to back up a minute because one of the things that Quinn did this yesterday where he singled out 4 guys on defense who he feels like are playing the way they want. It's Wagner and Luvu, Quan Martin, and Benjamin St. Juste. So you can, knock Benjamin St. Juste all you want. Is he a number 1 corner? No. But is he playing hard and doing what they want him to do? Yes. And is he going to get beat sometimes? Yes, of course. And it may happen in this game. but they do like how he's responded at cornerback because they don't have anybody else playing like that there. Not yet. So now what can he do in this game against Chase? When you have to be tough, like I know you can't just get up there and jam him. If you try to jam Jamar Chase all game with just a two-handed jam, he's going to kill you because he's going to get by you. But you have to be the surprise tactician, right? And one of the things I liked with St. Juice last week, there was a cover 2 play. If you remember the play where he drops and defends the ball, well, he does a really good job on that play of stunning Neighbors with the one-handed jam, disrupting the play at the snap, allows him to drop back into coverage, and it disrupts the timing a little bit, and he knocks the ball away. That's the kind of stuff you can do. Now you can, again, you're not going to do the same thing against Chase all the time because he'll just eventually destroy you. So you sometimes may see some of that. You may see some off coverage, but just focus on making the tackle. And that if you do that, then you can have success and force them to drive the ball down the field. The big plays are what can kill this team, and you just have to limit that for sure. And beware of Mike Gesicki, because if you're going to pay a lot of attention to the other two, that means guys like Percy Butler, Jeremy Chin, they're going to have to do a good job against the tight end because he will be a factor if you're not. The run game is not as good for them with Zach Moss. They will use some play action, but it doesn't seem like while they will use it, and it's probably in the top half of teams that use play action, it's not the most dangerous part of their game. And so, but I will say, if you want them to do a better job, stop run, get off some of those double teams and get the math better, then you're going to have 8 in the box. And I just don't think they're going to want to do that consistently because they'll just give up big plays for sure. And just pay attention to the math. See when you're watching the game, you want to stop it and if there's a big run, see how the math added up. And then you can see, because there are definitely times last week where you stop and say, there's nobody who can defend this gap because they're all here, and here, but nobody is there, but there's no one to be there, and sometimes it was Jeremy Chin came up on the one. Now you got to recognize that probably a little bit sooner, but also then I think Luvu kind of widened that gap a little bit too. So sometimes it's about staying in your gap and doing that. And I know with the tackles, they are asking them to do a little bit different technique. They wanted to be a little bit more aggressive getting upfield. It's not a dramatic change. Where the dramatic change was a few years ago when Sam Mills was here. That was dramatic for them. This is not as dramatic, but they are asking them to do some different things. And I think it's just a matter of finding what works for them to get a field. And they do, Allen and Payne have got to make some plays in this game. The Bengals left guard, I think Allen can have some success against him. I've seen now some of it was Chris Jones, but not always. Their Chiefs defensive tackles, they're using some of the swap moves that some of those big slap moves that Allen likes to make, that he can have success with that. So I think there are some things you can do with that. I think it's definitely an improved line. But I do think there are things that you can have some success with given what they can do. So let's get to the last one, is the Bengals defense against the run, because that's going to be a big factor in this game. They have not been a good team. They're allowing 4.5 yards per carry. That's a problem. Now, the Patriots, I thought, kind of bled them out a little bit, and it wasn't always they get a 16, 17-yard run and then a bunch of 2s and 1s. I thought the Chiefs were a lot more consistent, and I think I'm going to take that one because I think there are things that when you're defending the Chiefs, you have a lot more things to worry about. When you're defending the Patriots, there are not a lot to worry about with that offense. It's can they run the ball or not? And so they're running from a lot of tight packages. Jacoby Brissett, God bless him, thought when he came in last year, did a nice job. He's still what he is, and he's not a threat. They don't have the threats out there. So you can play them a little bit differently, whereas the Chiefs were able to spread them out more. And now, obviously, it's a better offense because of Patrick Mahomes. By the way, when I watch him, there are a couple of plays where you sit there and say, oh, when Jaden Daniels gets more experience, he'll make this play and this play. Well, guess who I saw do some of those same issues? Patrick Mahomes. You know what he else does? He makes a lot of plays. The point is, even some veteran quarterbacks where we're sitting there watching Jaden Daniels say, oh, this, they're doing the same thing sometimes. Maybe not to the same frequency for sure, because Mahomes is awesome. But even a guy like him still has some of those same hiccups, or maybe you just missed the read or whatever it is, right? So it happens. But what Daniels gives them in this run game is the threat. And I think the way I really liked how the run game design was, and last week, what the Chiefs did against the Bengals is created a lot of favorable boxes. Again, math, added up. 5 and 6 man boxes against the Chiefs. It's a recipe to run the ball all day. That's what I think Washington can do, but they did it last week and they can do it. And so I think that's something that they will have some success with, just through alignment, scheme, and then the threat of what Jaden Daniels can do. And I still go back to that 4th down and 1 play where it was showed a lot, some creativity, because you had Eckler and Robinson in the game at the same time. You have Eckler running around the left end, taking 2 defenders with him. You have the threat of Jaden Daniels taking a 3rd defender, and guess who carries the ball? Brian Robinson, 6 yards. And it's funny because I know Robinson is extremely excited about what's going on with this offense. And I even asked him, like, is there anything different with this run game? Is it there? He goes, we're running the same stuff about like last year. The difference is the number of times and the opportunities that he's getting. That's the difference. It's not about they're running gap, they're running zone, they're running all that stuff, but it's just about opportunities. I also think the line is blocking well with it. That's across the board. Andrew Wiley doing a nice job in there. I think the tight end's done a nice job. So I think that's something that you have to, if they want to build on anything, it's to me, it starts there, and allowing Daniels to learn without having to put the quote unquote cape on his back. So, and the Bengals now, they also have some issues with that defensive line because they have a couple guys out. Sheldon Rankins out, defensive tackle. BJ Hill, doubtful, defensive tackle. Chris Jenkins, a rookie, sounds like he's going to play. He's questionable, but he's still a rookie. So I think like there are ways that's a banged up line. Now, the one guy who's not banged up, first of all, they're a good linebacker, 55 Wilson, really good. And they do have some good players in the D. Trey Hendrickson is elite, and he's as in a pass rusher. So that's going to be a big challenge for Cornelius Lucas as he lines up mostly on that side. And if I'm them, I'm going to flip him around, but you also Sam Hubbard on the other side, whenever he's rushing, you've got to watch Wiley. Does he get beat to the inside again? Because that's where he typically does. So, but for Lucas, the benefit for him, what he has to hope is that his length helps against him. It's just that Hendrickson is so good. He has quick hands. He'll give you different moves. Watch for him to try to go upfield a few times in the first few series and then beat him inside. And then trying to get his hand in his chest. And that you saw it last week, one hand in the chest, drive inside. And that's what he can do. He can convert the speed to power, power to speed, whatever you want, whichever way it needs to be. That's why he is elite, and he will be a problem. Now, the one thing you saw too that could happen is if he gets upfield fast, there can be gaps created for Jaden Daniels to sneak through. Do they play a lot more zone? If you do, are you keeping your eyes upfield? Because if you do, you have a chance for some big plays that have been available the first couple of weeks that we haven't seen him hit. So I think that's going to be something to watch too. But Hendrickson will be a problem. I'll be curious to see how much do they play Brandon Coleman against him, and do you help? One thing I saw the running backs working on this week in pregame or pre-practice warmups, chipping and then getting out for a pass. Chip with your shoulder, get out for a pass. Terry McLaurin, I wouldn't be surprised if he does some of that when he's lined up tight. So I think if they're smart, they'll do a lot of chipping and on Hendrickson in particular. And that's the guy you're going to have to worry about. But I do believe if you can spread them a little bit, or not even spread them, but just through alignment, through formation, I think you can do some things and also with the action of the play, the jet action right after the snap, some motion right before the snap, which they've done. So I think there are ways that the things that they do, I think, can hurt what Cincinnati wants to stop. And then you add in the fact that they're missing some key guys in that defensive front. It could be a successful day for them. That's how Washington's going to have to stay in this game for sure. And so there you go, folks. The last thing, I think one of the things too, the other thing to watch too with this tempo, do they play with more tempo? And I'm going to be, because I know that's something that they definitely want to do. And so you have Taylor Britt talking about the simplistic offense. Part of that too is if you're going to run tempo, you're going to keep things more simple. The key is to regulate the defense and keeping guys on the field so you know what you're getting each time. That's what they want to do. And so if you do that, then you have a chance. But will they run more tempo this week? I think that that's something they definitely want to do more of this season. Even last week, like what you'd see is big play, get downfield, keep them on the field, go. It's not always, because I know the one time it was like, they do it because of the play to Ertz and didn't want to challenge it. No, they did it every time there's a big play. They'd run down and stay in tempo and get, snap the ball a little bit quicker. So that's just part of what they want to do. And there you go. And again, stop Hendrickson. He will drop in some zone blitzes, by the way, but stop him. And then you can which is really hard to do. So, but contain him, I should say. So you do that, you can have some success. Anyways, for this game, I think it's going to be tough for Washington just because can you really see the Bengals going 0-3? Well, I don't like thinking like that because maybe they're 0-2 for a reason. But you do wonder about playing a desperate team at home on a Monday night. That's always a tough one for a team with a lot of younger players in key spots to go handle. But I really, really want to see how Jaden Daniels handles this. And I think there are ways that, this team can look good. Listen, look good. Don't get embarrassed on a Monday night. Don't have a Bears repeat, right? Look good. Build on that. Play well. Build on that, whatever the outcome is. Let's see what Jaden Daniels does. That's what I'm most curious to see. Anyway, folks, I'll be back after the game. I will talk to you next time. Always appreciate you tuning in. So talk to you on Monday night, Tuesday morning, early. See you later, folks.